You said the system is afraid of your power in birth.
The system wants to control us. They want to keep us numb. They want to keep us suppressed. They want to keep us in fear. There is an awakening that happens within a mother and a woman that is unlike any other ceremony I have ever witnessed.
What you mentioned too of like staying in your power and in your essence and your knowing, you've even described it as a psychedelic portal for birth.
It is psychedelic. And so I love to hold birth as that ceremony.
Where do you feel birth is potentially going wrong by not creating the safety that then is inducing the trauma?
The more that we give away our power, the more trauma we cause ourselves.
Welcome back to the What About Mom podcast. Today I have Demi, a trauma-informed midwife and somatic guide. She's also bringing in her soon-to-be child as well, coming in very soon, any day now. So I'm so excited to have you here to talk more about birth and looking at pregnancy and labor from a very different lens than the traditional healthcare system does. So welcome on.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here with you and having this conversation. So thanks for having me.
Yes, your work is so powerful. I obviously found you on Instagram because that's where I find all my favorite people. And as soon as I came across your work, it was just like a full body, yes, intuitive knowing and that wisdom that you carry for mothers and walking mothers through this pregnancy, labor, and postpartum season as a woman first and a mother second, if you will. It was just such a beautiful way of being able to view birth and the perspective of this process. And you also said something really powerful that I'd love for you to dive into further. You said the system is afraid of your power in birth. And I got chills as I said that. What do you mean by that?
I just got chills too. Woo. Yes. Well, I am rebirthing this new iteration of my work right now, and it's really just coming deeper into the body. And what I meant by that, it's so radical and it might ruffle some tail feathers. It already has. But it simply is the system wants to keep women numb through childbirth and mothering and pregnancy. They want to keep us stuck in fear. It is part of the system. It's its way of controlling us, because when women are truly birthing in their power, they are a force to reckon with. And the way we meet ourselves, I'm getting full body chills right now, is so incredible. I have sat at the feet of so many birthing women, and I've sat at the feet of birthing women in all different kinds of capacities and containers, from hospital birth to home birth to sovereign free birth, you name it. And when a woman gets to birth in her essence and undisturbed, unnumbed, it is incredible to see the woman that is birthed on the other side of this, and to be able to hold the container for that sort of empowerment to come through is just unstoppable. And so what I mean by that is the system wants to control us. They want to keep us numb. They want to keep us suppressed. They want to keep us in fear because it's a way of controlling, versus if we truly birth from our bodies, from our innate knowing, from our primal selves, there is an awakening that happens within a mother and a woman that is unlike any other ceremony I have ever witnessed. So that's what I mean by that. Yeah.
I resonate with this so much. You know, I've had multiple different birth experiences in different containers, as you've mentioned as well. And there is something that gets activated in a woman. And I think that this can happen in multiple settings as well. But what you mentioned too, of like staying in your power and in your essence and in your knowing, that is where that activation comes from. And you've even described it as a psychedelic portal for birth. So dive into that a little bit for me as well.
Yeah, I would love to. Well, birth is an altered state of consciousness. In my quote unquote free time, my partner and I guide guide humans, people through trauma reprocessing experiences, and we actually use psychedelics in a therapeutic guided way. And so the comparison to the psychedelic journeys that we take people on in comparison with the birth ceremony, they are almost literally the same. It is
Wow.
so wild what can happen in the birth portal. I love to call it a portal because we are going into a portal. It is a ceremony. It's the highest ceremony that we can ever walk through. And it's psychedelic, and our brain waves get altered just very similarly to if we were to take a sacrament or a plant medicine. And so when we go into birth, we go into an altered state of consciousness, which is a psychedelic experience. And when unaltered and undisturbed, it truly acts exactly like that. Our brain waves start to alter, we go into theta and delta. The veil starts to lift. We become one with God, source, creator, whoever it is you believe in, your higher power. We are the medicine. The medicine starts to awaken inside of us through this portal. And so it is psychedelic. And so I love to hold birth as that ceremony. It is psychedelic. We have to start treating it like that, because I love to use this analogy. You would never give someone 5 grams of mushrooms and then put them on a table, strap them down, turn on the bright lights, bring in strangers. They would freak out. And so why is birth any different? It is the same. Our brainwaves are getting altered. There's all sorts of chemicals and hormones surging through us. So it really does become a psychedelic experience, and it becomes a full rebirth for the mom and a birth for the baby. So yeah, the psychedelic nature of birth is so fascinating, and I love to create safety for the container to protect it so we can allow it to be the psychedelic ceremony that it actually is, and honor it.
Yeah.
It's coming back to the ancient wisdom of birth.
Yeah. And that safety piece, I think, is so important that you talk about. And, as a trauma-informed midwife, it's supporting not even just mothers, but it sounds like all humans through processing trauma through the somatic body and releasing that. Where do you feel birth is potentially going wrong by not creating the safety that then is inducing the trauma?
Yeah. Well, it's being put into hands other than the mothers. It's being taken from mothers. It's being taken from their innate knowing. It's us giving away our power, not to be victims here. We also have a part in that. We give away our power. And so we have to start to awaken and educate around this. The more that we give away our power, the more trauma we cause ourselves, right? And the system that I speak of is so ready to take that power away if we are so easily ready to give it away. And for a lot of women, that's all we know, because, it's, oh, you're going to the doctor's appointments, you're doing all these things. And it really I start to question, what is true prenatal care? What if we start to reshape what prenatal care is, and we start to engage with it in a more holistic way, rather than just showing up at the doctor and letting them tell you what's going on with your body, letting them tell you what's going on with your baby? What if we can go back within ourselves and be our own doctor, our own midwife, our own doula, and start to resource through our own intuition? And so when we give away our power, we are creating the landscape for trauma to happen. And especially when birth is being medicalized, I think that is the danger. That's the risk right there. And I'm not knocking hospitals, because I do truly feel there is a time and a place. I'm not full just, we need to throw away the entire medical system, but most birth is safe at home. It is safe
Mm.
in a safe environment. And what is that environment? What is safety for each woman? I think we have to guide women back to, where do you feel safest giving birth, right? Where do you feel safest walking through this threshold, lifting the veils, meeting life and death? Is that in the hospital system, or is that in the comfort of your own home? And I think for most women, they would agree that it is in their own home and space. And so when we start to take birth into the medical system, we already are tainting such a magical, beautiful ceremonial process if there's no reason to make it medical. Right. And there's a small percentage where we do need the hospital, and that's amazing. And I'm so grateful the hospital is there. But if there is no medical reason to be in a hospital, we really have to start questioning and looking at and inquiring within ourselves, where is the safest place for me to walk through this portal?
Mm. Yeah, and I think so much of that question for women to answer, whether they're in preconception or pregnancy, is sometimes hard for them to access that because they maybe have never challenged themselves enough or asked those deeper level questions for themselves to be able to get the ancient wisdom or to get the answers or their intuitive knowing. uh, how would you help somebody get to that process, right? Let's say, I mean, as a midwife that has supported a lot of women in multiple different settings, you have a woman in front of you who's pregnant and she wants to have a different birth experience, or she wants to have a birth where she does feel in her power and she does feel in her essence. How would you help someone start walking through that process, or what would you recommend to her to be able to start taking those steps so she can start building that self resilience and confidence and self trust in herself?
Yeah, beautiful question. My foundational piece to conscious conception, conscious birth, conscious mothering is it starts with the inner work. And
Mm.
so ideally, we start to support women in preconception. That's like my sweet spot, but I'm serving so many women in pregnancy too, because sometimes that's just how it happens, right? We get pregnant and then we realize that we want to do it differently. So we start our journey there. But it really is the inner preparation that creates the safety. And so we have
Mm.
to really go into the layers of ourselves. A lot of the work that I do is parts work. So we start to look at all of the parts that make us who we are, the ones that hold the pain, the suffering, the little ones inside, the vulnerable ones, the ones that hold our joy and our source codes. We have to go in and connect with them, because ultimately what's happening is that when we go into birth, into this psychedelic state, all of our protector parts typically fall down. And then what we're left with is these more vulnerable parts. And the vulnerable parts are not bad, but some of them do hold trauma, and they do hold emotional wounding, and they do hold imprints that maybe aren't what I call source codes. They're not imprints of safety. So we have to go to those little ones inside, and we have to learn how to tend to them and bring them back into wholeness so that they don't hijack us when we go into this experience. And this circles back to the psychedelic nature of birth is so psychedelic that all of our stuff comes up in birth. It comes up in pregnancy. If we are willing to look at it, we have the opportunity in pregnancy constantly to look at all of these inner parts that are surfacing. And so how can I support someone? How do I support someone? It really starts with that inner landscape. We have to go within and we have to see, okay, wow, there's this controller part that needs to know everything, that wants to control everything. Can we work with her? Because she coming to your birth is probably not going to go so well. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
even that she can't come to the birth, but if she is the one running and hijacking the birth, you're not going to be able to surrender and let go. And you probably know this so well, but our fascia, our tissues, they hold and store emotions, trauma, right? That controller part that needs to know. And so if we don't know how to work with those parts, they will take over. And that's often what I see causes quote unquote issues in birth is, those are the blockages that come up. And so if we don't have the tools or the resources to know how to move through them and work with them, they will hijack us. And often they lead to a slew of interventions. So, where I go with clients in preconception, pregnancy, conscious birth preparation is we really start to work with the internal landscape that is happening within. We learn how to work with those parts to create inner safety. And it's through the inner safety that then we manifest and create the external container for our birth. And then there's all the fun stuff, like learning how to get into our bodies to birth our babies and open. And so there's so many layers to the work that I do, but the foundation is, where we first start, is really dialing in, okay, what's going on inside? What parts of you don't feel safe? How can we continue to make them feel safe, create safety, allow them to heal so that you can go into birth and be the birthing goddess that you need to be, right? And birth it asks us to open. If we don't feel safe, our bodies will not open. So we have to create that internal safety first. So yeah, in short, in a nutshell, that's kind of where I start, is with that. And then we go into the body, we go into the embodiment of birth. All right, what blockages are in the way of my body opening? Let's work with those.
That's so beautiful. And I love the way that you explain safety. And of course, starting in well women's care would be so helpful, even as early as when, period care, and really starting to learn about menstruation and how our body functions. Like, if we could just, impact women and girls at that age, it will carry them forward when they, conceive and all of those things. But man, what you have described, and for anyone listening too, of maybe they didn't have that safety, that internal trust in themselves. I can say firsthand that's exactly what happened for my first experience, where I did prepare for a home birth experience and I did not do the parts work. I did not find that inner safety in my body. I really was trying to control the outcome in the birth experience, which led to me not going into labor until like past 42 weeks. And we know, timelines are arbitrary. But also when I did, it was such a slow, progression of labor. And it was on and off for days. And, you know, in the moment, and even the year after that, I really don't feel like I fully understood what happened to me and why that happened to me. But the more that I started to work with myself and to find that somatic release and that somatic work and become more aware of how my nervous system was affecting not my day to day, even before labor, like you said, how you live your normal life and how you react in certain situations throughout your pregnancy, throughout normal life, will be what shows up in labor for you. So it's not like you can start the work in labor. It really has to happen prior. But because I became attuned to that and started doing that work, I really do believe, people ask me all the time, how did you go from having a C-section to a VBAC at home and having a home birth, but it was a VBAC? That's so scary. I was like, I literally found safety and created trust within my body. That is the number one thing. And I'm saying this from a pelvic floor therapist standpoint, like, do the pelvic floor therapy work, do the chiropractic work, like, do all of the things, have a doula, all of the things. But if we can't find that self-trust and safety within our own body to release and let go of control of the outcome of the process of the way that we think it's going to go, then we're not going to be able to achieve that sovereign birth experience where we can, enter the psychedelic portal.
Yeah.
I would say that's very much how my second birth experience was. It was such a euphoric, beautiful experience that I literally can't even put into words. And I tell people, I'm like, I would go through birth again. It was so incredible. It was so beautiful, but it was because I got to that point. Now, saying that, there was one point during my labor experience where I did feel the rise of that. And it was at the same point in my previous labor experience that I did not, quote unquote, progress and where all the interventions started. Whereas my body was dilated, but I was pushing and baby wasn't coming down. And I got to that point in my HVAC where that same like I felt the rise of the fear, like, oh no, this is going to happen again. My body doesn't know how to push and then I
Mhm.
had to really talk myself through with, of course, an amazing home birth midwife
Yeah.
that also supported me in that really um, safe way of trying to, like, communicate to me, your body is safe.
Yeah.
Your body knows exactly what it's doing. So when I got into a tiny little moment during my HVAC of spiraling, if you will, of like, I don't know, do you think my body can? She just was so calm and so grounded and said, your body is doing exactly what it needs to do. Your body is safe. Baby is coming. And so it was just that calm reassurance too of the midwife. So shout out to midwives, but
Yeah.
really that calm reassurance that allowed me to be like, oh yes, I remember. I
Mm.
remember that I can trust my body. I remember that I am safe. And I think that that's such an important piece in preparing for birth, no matter where you birth.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story because you are a walking testimony of the work, and it's so neat because I can see how your personal experiences are blending into your professional work, and we can only take people as deep as we are able to go within ourselves. And so, it's part of your journey. That first birth was exactly what you needed to thrust you into this new evolution, both professionally and personally. And yes, do not underestimate the container that you set for yourself, and communicate with your birth team. Here's what might come up. Here's the fears, here's the stories, here's the parts. That way when you go into it, because here's my whole thing, it's not about being totally healed by the time you give birth. I don't actually think we're ever fully healed. I think it's a journey. I think we learn how to hold ourselves, better and better and better, more attuned with more love. But it's not about the parts not coming up. It's not about the fear not coming up. It's just knowing how to work with it when it does. And so that's sort
Mm.
of the training here. And don't underestimate the team that you have, and don't underestimate letting them know what is going on in your psyche, in your body, past experiences. Because for you in that moment, part of the work that I do is relational somatic therapy. And so it's exactly sort of what just happened. The story that you described with your second birth and your midwife is she was able to show up as that grounded force, which is what your system needed to feel safe. So it's like a combination of the internal work that you were doing with coupled with the relational healing of, hey, I've got you. You've got this. It's the affirmations that you needed in that moment to believe in yourself and carry through. And so that is so beautiful, and don't underestimate that component, right? There's so many components. There's the internal safety, which then is a direct reflection of our outside world and what we manifest on the outside. And then there's all the fun things that you mentioned, pelvic floor therapy and chiropractic work. And I love all of those things. All those things matter. And yes, to echo what you were saying, none of that matters if we don't do the internal work, because that is ultimately what is running the show here. If we can't surrender enough to open our bodies, all of those things, they matter, but they don't work as well, right? And so part of the internal work that I do is creating the safety within the body. And birth is somatic. Somatic is about going into the body. It's about understanding what is being held in the body. It's about exploring all of the stories that we hold in our bodies. And so when we go into the birth portal, it is somatic, it is primal, it's body based. So anything that's stuck, emotions, trauma, blockages, it will show up. So learning how to work with that is really the key here. So yeah, I love that you share that. I have a very similar experience with my first baby, and now practicing what I preach, doing all of my inner work as I prepare to, my choice is free birthing this next baby here with my partner. And so I can also speak from that place of doing my own internal work, the shifts that I've seen from my first birth in comparison to this pregnancy and soon to be birth are so much different. I feel so much more safe in my body. I feel trusting. I trust my baby. And there's just this innate knowing, there's this innate trust, even in the mystery of birth, because birth is mystery. It's mysterious, right? No one ever knows how it's going to go. All we can do is prepare our bodies and our psyche to surrender. So, a question that I often love to ask clients that I'm working with, it's kind of like a self inquiry question, is what stands between me and a sovereign birth? What stands between me and surrender? And as we dive into that question, what stands between me and surrender, that's often where the work lies, the inner work lies, right? Because as I sit and meditate with that question, what does stand between me and surrender, which is ultimately what I have to do when I give birth, I completely surrender and open my body. What stands between me and that? Right? Is it the controller part? Is it the part that needs to know? Is it my sexual trauma that I haven't really looked at and healed? What comes up? What do you notice and track in your body when you hear that question? What stands between me and surrender? And whether you're pregnant or not, I love that question because it applies to all of us. We're all human. We all hopefully get to lie down at night and surrender into our beds. And it's just such a beautiful question because it really starts to, if you bring it into the body, that question, we start to realize the places of contraction or tension that we're holding in our body. And one of my famous sayings is the body is the parts is the body, meaning that the parts live in the tissue, they live in the cells, they live in the fascia. So as we take in that question for self of what stands between me and surrender, my invitation to those of you listening to this is start to track it in the body. Where do you notice tension? Where do you notice contraction? Where do you notice tightening? Explore that. That is a huge place to start, just going straight into that. And that's kind of how I weave somatic work with birth work. Is birth is somatic. It is body-based, right? Ideally, when we drop into the birth portal, our thinking mind starts to kind of go away as we drop into that trance state. So it all becomes body. And so whatever is being stored or blocked, that will come up. So that's a beautiful place to start, is what stands between me and surrender. Start tracking that in the body. And that is a beautiful place to start this inner work cycle.
Absolutely. That's such a powerful question. I hope that those are listening, like literally write that down and actually take some time to sit in quiet and silence with it.
Yeah.
And with these questions, like go as deep as you feel like you can or want, or whatever comes up for you. I know sometimes like journaling that out makes me feel like I'm pen to paper and I'm really pouring that out. Sometimes that question, what stands between me and surrender, and then answering your own question out loud and just sitting with that and going back and being your own therapist in a way. Because I think that we forget that we actually hold so much inner wisdom and intuition that the body, the somatic, right, actually knows the answer to that question. Because our logical mind might think, or if somebody hasn't really done a lot of somatic work and they ask themselves that question, they might just be like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. You tell me. Or they outsource their power. That's like they outsource that inner wisdom. But it really is sometimes uncomfortable in the beginning when you start to do this work to really sit in the peace and the quiet, ask this question, answer the question, and sometimes you'll be so surprised at what comes up for you.
Yeah.
And then it'll be a massive unlock. The other thing that I was thinking throughout this is this work that, women are doing, whether they're in the preconception phase, like kudos, please start then. But even if you're starting in pregnancy, surrendering now in pregnancy and really adapting to nervous system, the somatic work, getting more connected to the self-trust, the intuition, the wisdom that you hold, it will only pay off for you once you become a mother. And I think so often people get pregnant and they just start immediately planning for postpartum and the nursery and the baby clothes and the car seats and all of those things. And that's so important. Absolutely, it can be important. We don't need as many things as you think, though.
Yes.
You learn that the second time
Minimalist.
around. Oh my gosh. I mean, my first birth experience, like I was first time mom, right? I'm like, I had everything planned. I had all the gadgets, all the things. Second time, I was like 39 weeks and like there was no
Yeah.
nursery. We shouldn't even need a nursery. Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? I just had some basics in the
Yes.
home and that's all you really need, right? But
Same.
you learn that as you go. And I think that the groundwork that you're laying and what you're speaking about so beautifully is like the somatic work, the nervous system work, the really trusting ourselves and, finding that in pregnancy will only support motherhood because motherhood is also this big surrender journey, as you know, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I echo what you're saying 100%. All of this work is also preparing us for motherhood, which is
Mhm.
the ultimate surrender. There are so many times in motherhood where I feel like I'm on a journey. I'm like, okay, wow, like checking my ego and surrendering to the unknown and all of the needs of my children. And so, yes, all of this work is preparing us for motherhood, which is the ultimate journey. And it's so wild because preconception, pregnancy, birth is just the start of it. I love to see it as like it's an initiation. We are in an
Yes.
initiation process for an even bigger journey called motherhood. And
Yes.
we have to start preparing for it on deeper levels. Yeah, more than just buying all the things and, preparing the nest. All those things are important. Don't get me wrong. I love to prep my nest and I've been in that journey. But more so it's the inner work. It's preparing us for this initiation that we're about to go through, which is for the even bigger journey ahead of motherhood. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. You think back to those early postpartum days when you're not getting the sleep and baby's having trouble latching in the beginning or whatever it might be. It's like, are you remaining grounded? Are
Yeah.
you remaining calm? Because and maybe you can speak more to this too, but just so much more research is coming out about like mother's nervous system and mother's
Mm,
psyche immediately impacting babies. I mean, of course, this is in the birth, itself,
yeah.
but then also that immediate postpartum phase too.
Yeah. I would love to speak on this for a moment. Yeah. I'm actually in a pre and perinatal psychology course right now. So I'm diving
Mm.
into all of this. But yeah, the mother's nervous system and the baby's nervous system are one still, really up until about 3 years old. And that developmental phase is about 0 to 7. They're such crucial years for the mother and the baby and child, and for the bonding and for the secure attachment and for the nervous system to develop in a healthy way. And so the more that we can tend to the mother's nervous system, we are actually tending to the baby's nervous system as well. And so echoing what you said as well, yes, if you can start this work in preconception, amazing. That's like the dream. And we're human. We're probably not all going to be able to do that for X, Y, and Z reason. But the more that we can tend to our nervous system and learn to be more in parasympathetic, right? Fight or flight is there for a reason. We don't want to shut that system off. But if we are living there most of our life, that is not healthy, right? And so our baby is picking up on that. So the more that we can learn to go into, again, it's the inner safety, right? Parasympathetic is safety, right? It's connection to self, to source, to other. And so the more that we can train our nervous system, which how do we train it? The deeper work is working with our trauma. We all have trauma. We are all human, whether that is capital T trauma or small trauma, developmental trauma, it doesn't really matter. We all have trauma. We are all human. So the more that we can go into that and work with that, that is how we create safety in the system, therefore have a more regulated nervous system. And so when we're pregnant with our babies and we give birth and we're mothering them, they feel what we feel. I often have a lot of people ask, like, is it safe to do the inner work while pregnant? And I'm like, absolutely, yes, it absolutely is. We can create a safe container for that, because here's the thing, whatever you suppress, your baby also feels. So it's better
Yes.
to express that. You're teaching them how to feel emotions. You're teaching them the cycle of rupture and repair. You're teaching them how to go out of the window of tolerance and come back into it. So, absolutely, yes, it's 100% safe to do this inner work. It's actually better, because what's the alternative? Suppressing everything, teaching our little ones how to hold it in. And this is kind of off on a tangent, so I won't go too far, but oftentimes as a midwife, I see babies born, and then there's this diagnosis of colic, and that diagnosis drives me
Mhm.
nuts, because I'm like, there's a reason why your baby is crying like that. It is trying to speak. And so oftentimes it has a lot to do with the mother's nervous system. What's the mother's state of being throughout the pregnancy and into the postpartum? Our babies pick up on that. They are energetic beings. They are one with us still. So the more that we can create awareness and just tending to the mama, tending to the nervous system, creating safety, creating love, nourishment in all the forms, the more the baby feels that. But yeah, it's
Mm.
fascinating. The developmental time is, I had a good cry the other day as I was feeling into the weight of being a mother. It was so beautiful. My partner was just giving me a little bit of body work, and I just had this huge release, and I was just crying, and I was feeling the weight of being a mother, of wow, it's so
Yeah.
much responsibility. It's such a gift in so many ways. And it's heavy sometimes. And so the cry, the tears were just of that, of like, wow, to be a mother, to hold so much, to be tending to myself so that I can tend to my babies in a healthy way. It can be a lot sometimes, and it's also a gift. So, yeah, just speaking to all the mothers who are on this path of awakening and consciousness, and really not wanting to put our own stuff onto our kids. I commend all of you, because it's not easy work, and it is really the deep inner work. And what I can say, being on the other side, while the healing's never done and I have plenty more work to do, I am at that point in the journey where I'm far enough along to feel the liberation of all this inner work and see how it is directly affecting my children in such a beautiful way. And all I can say is keep going. It's so worth it, because the mother is the heart of the nervous system of the family. The more that
Mm.
we can ground and center and learn how to be in our highest self and have influence over all of our parts, the more our family feels that. And that really is the heartbeat of the family, the nervous system of the family.
Wow, you said it so beautifully. I resonate with all of what you just said too. And I hope it also really lands for mothers that this is really important work that we're doing. And oftentimes, as mothers, we can suppress our own needs and our own tending to, and from guilt or whatever it might be. But exactly what you said, like the work that we do on ourselves will directly impact our children. And we all know that a mama would do anything for her kiddos. So let this be the first thing that you do for yourself, whether you start in pregnancy and that's beautiful and you kind of get a jump on it if it's your first kiddo. But even if you're listening to this and you're like 2 kids in and your kids are older, 3 and 6 or 5 and 10, it is never too late to do this work, to dive even deeper into yourself, to ask the question, what is standing between me and surrender? It doesn't even have to be birth. It could be work related. It could be between your partnership at home. It could be between your children.
Yeah.
It could be between yourself, surrendering within myself, right? This work can be done at any time. So I love what you spoke to, that connection between mama and her children, and also the liberation you feel being on the other side. I would say I'm in a similar place. I wouldn't say I've always been there, but I've been on the journey enough at this point that I'm like, wow, I tangibly see the direct correlation, the direct connection to how it impacts our children, that it almost makes you just want to do more of it and to dive even deeper as well.
Yeah.
I want to pivot to one other thing that you talk a lot about, which I think is not commonly talked about. We talk about it in terms of, the cervix and the throat and the pelvic floor and
Mm.
how all of that's interconnected into vocal tones, into healing, and to help women, in our space, working mostly with the somatic connection, but the pelvic floor of
Mhm.
that connection between vocal tones and the pelvic floor and how that contracts or relaxes and
Yeah.
lengthens. You'd also talk about that very similarly in your work that you do of the throat to the womb
Mhm.
cervix connection. I know you recently did a masterclass on it as well.
Yeah.
Share from your lens in the birthing community from a midwife perspective.
Yeah.
What is that connection? Why is it so important to tend to it and to learn more about it?
Yeah, I'm going to speak on that through a trauma informed, more psychosomatic lens because it's quite fascinating. So, the throat and the cervix are so connected. If the throat is tense, blocked off, so will the cervix. And so
Mm.
oftentimes it can be really hard or challenging for women to connect to their pelvic floor and to their
Mm.
womb. So I love to start with the throat, because if the throat is opened, then okay, we're creating that pathway, that bridge down to the cervix and into the pelvis. So the more psychosomatic lens that I love to look through it in is simply, what is your relationship to using your voice, to speaking? Were you suppressed a lot as a child? Did your needs matter? Were you allowed to speak freely? Were you allowed to be your authentic self? Or were you suppressed, shut down, muzzled, right? Quieted,
Mm.
numbed? All of that is going to mirror the cervix, right? And our connection there. So I love to start there and start to look at the throat of like, wow, what is my relationship to using my voice, to speaking?
Mhm.
Is it safe for me to speak, right? Was it safe for me to speak as a child, even? And so, as we start to go into those layers and we start to unlock the throat chakra, the energy there, we start to naturally open the bridge, the gateway down to the pelvis and the cervix. And then, magically, through that work, women start to be able to feel the pelvic floor. They start to feel the cervix, the womb, the pelvic bowl. And so we start to create this pathway, this relationship, and this bridge between the throat and the cervix. And then when we are talking about birth, making primal deep noises through the throat, right? And of course, if we don't feel safe to use our voice, we're not going to feel safe in birth. So that's a huge preparation as well, is what is my relationship to using my voice? Can we get women to feel more comfortable in that? And then just right there, by opening that up, we're creating that pathway, that bridge down into the cervix. And so when the throat is open, the cervix is opened, and vice versa. And we feel the primal innate intelligence of moaning and making noises and opening through the throat chakra, which opens up the cervix and the pelvis for birth. So that's another kind of somatic indicator. If our throat chakra is closed, if we don't feel safe to speak, if we feel like genuine tension through the throat, I always invite people, like, just start to explore your throat, feel it. Does it feel open and soft, or does it feel tight and tense? Let those somatic indicators guide you deeper. What is the story being held here? What is the belief? And oftentimes when we're talking about the throat, it's, I'm not safe to have needs. I'm not safe to speak. I'm not safe to have my voice. So we have to go into that. Where was that story birthed? How did it become? And how do we create the safety for you to start to unlock that? And then right there, our cervix starts to open as well. And when we bring that wisdom into birth, we are able to surrender into the process deeper, right? Our voice, our throat is such a tool for us, such a resource in birth. And and oftentimes we see women sometimes in birth, vomiting, throwing up. it's actually a really beautiful sign. It's like your throat is opening. So is your cervix.
Mhm.
Trust it. Keep going into it. So yeah,
Yes.
I geek out on the throat cervix connection from more of that lens. Um, and it's fascinating too. So much emotion can be stored in the pelvis. So vice versa, as we continue to make noise and open up our throat chakra, we're also creating a pathway for some of that energy and stagnancy to move as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know through transition, right? The release that happens through transition is really preparing the cervix to open even more so too. So there's like this somatic connection, there's this energetic connection, there's this mental emotional connection, and the physical anatomical connection as well is there. The mirrors of the throat and the cervix looks wildly similar because
Yeah.
they are somatically connected in that way. And that also kind of goes more into the intimacy piece, especially in the work that we do with the pelvic floor, not being able to open and to release, and not affecting, sexual intimacy, sexual chemistry, all of those things too.
Yeah.
This is another level of really getting into the throat. And so sometimes, as I'm sure you do, working through the throat will also work through the cervix.
Yeah.
Blood, like just thinking about it, just knowing about that, we're actually sending more nervous system signals. We're sending more blood flow just by being connected and by knowing and having that wisdom and that knowledge. We're already starting the reconnection process. It's such a beautiful way of thinking about opening the door for our voice, for expressing our needs, our desires, our wishes as we prepare for a birth.
Yeah.
That, the only openings that we have, I tell people many times, is we have our mouth and we have our vaginal canal, our urethra, and our anal canal at the bottom of the pelvic floor.
Yeah.
And those are our openings.
Yeah.
And so, of course, they're connected. Of course, they're somatically connected. Of course, they're energetically connected. These are our two exits and our portals in our body and their openings. That it's really important to harness that relationship. I love that you speak on this and educate on this and teach women how to prepare for birth with this connection as well. So I want to pivot into, how do people find you, Demi? I want everyone to find you. I want more women to be able to work with you. Do you do virtual work in preparation for this? Tell us, what's the best place to connect with you, how to find you, and how to work with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have a website, and so you can find me there. I have lots of beautiful, fun resources on there. I have all my masterclasses uploaded and saved as well. I do one-on-one virtual work and in person. And yeah, it's somatic birth prep. It's preparing our body in a primal, innate way. So you can find me there. I do monthly masterclasses. So if you have any interest in joining for those on various topics. And yeah, you can find me through my Instagram as well. I'm pretty active on there with just offering words of wisdom and free content in that way. And I am currently working on a somatic primal birth course right now. So I have a wait list for that. And I'm hoping to launch that in the new year as just a way for women to have more access to this work in a more accessible, affordable way. So keep your eye out for that as well.
I love that. And what's your Instagram handle? What's the website? And we'll also link them below for people.
Perfect. Yeah, it's Somatic Rebirthing on Instagram, and it's somaticrebirthing.com for my website.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Demi. It's been a pleasure to talk with you and to learn from you. And I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing for women and for mothers.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Thank you, sister. Ciao.